Hello once again, and thanks for joining us for Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic. We've got wind chill advisories here on the eastern Arctic coast for wind chills to 55 degrees below zero. Western Arctic coast, wind chill advisory and a winter weather advisory there. Throw some blowing snow in, reducing visibilities to a half mile or less, and still looking at wind chills to 55 degrees below zero for the Western Arctic coast as well. And this is out for tonight until 3 p.m. Friday afternoon. Otherwise, no other watches, advisories, or warnings out anywhere around the state. So moving on to satellite imagery, can see clouds moving from south to north here, bringing some significant rainfall into the southern panhandle over the last 24 hours with rain all the way up, rain and snow all the way up into the northern areas as well, and then lighter amounts along the eastern North Gulf coastal areas. And some snow, areas of snow from northern Cook Inlet here with this batch of clouds lifting northward. Still a little bit of light snow and flurries going on over the northern Cook Inlet area into the Susitna Valley this afternoon. But anywhere from a couple inches falling from Anchorage all the way up into the Fairbanks area. Also Copper River Basin picking up anywhere from 1 to maybe 2 inches of snow in some areas there. White up here in the North Slope, that's due to cold ground temperatures, mostly clear skies up in that area. Temperatures in the minus 30s to minus 40s up there. And cold wind chills on the eastern Arctic coast. Some clouds coming down there, catching the central Arctic coast there, keeping it a little warmer up around zero on the central Arctic coast due to the cloud cover coming down from the north. Then we have out to the west, low pressure here, slowly moving northward, and another weak low near the Pribilofs, yet some showers here over the Adak area on in toward the Fox Islands. Weakening front coming out of this low center here, breaking up as it comes onto the coast down across the Alaska Peninsula. Pretty light precipitation amounts associated with that, not much in the way of significant wind as well. That low kind of just spinning there, not moving a whole lot. And then next front looks stronger coming into the Shemya area. Just the leading edge of the cloud shield there making it into Shemya early this afternoon with the heavier precipitation still back to the west. On the chart today, here's this low pressure, weak low pressure over south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula area, and the trough extending northward, and again bringing anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of snow from northern Cook Inlet northward, give or take in the Susitna Valley, all the way up to Nenana to Fairbanks, picking up a couple inches of snow, and then that tapers off as you go north over toward Eagle and ends by the time you get to the Brooks Range there, and temperatures quite cold with gusty winds here through the passes of the western Brooks Range, also on the western Arctic coast, winds gusting 30 to 40 miles an hour. They're supporting the wind chills, even colder temperatures, but all you need is 15 miles an hour of wind to get wind chills to 55 degrees below zero there, and you'll hold that tonight. Then this weakening front here bringing some areas of light snow onto the southwest coast, locally into Bristol Bay, some shower activity around Kodiak, back to the eastern Aleutians, a little more widespread area snow showers here on the south side of this low center with this trough coming across the Adak-Atka area. Then a break here, narrow ridge of high pressure ahead of that next front that we saw on the satellite imagery west of Shemya there. And then this low pressure area sort of tracking northward here brought the heaviest rainfall amounts, as I mentioned, over the southern panhandle today. In the last 24 hours, Ketchikan picked up 3.81 inches of precipitation, while Metlakatla had about a little under 2.5 inches. And then Heidelberg, their southern Prince of Wales Island, it had about 1.18 inches, and then a half an inch, lighter amounts to the north, but still half an inch of rainfall at Klawock, Petersburg, and Cake today, and about a quarter an inch around Juneau, third of an inch Yakutat, and that about sums up definitely the heavier precipitation occurring over the southeast coast. And for tonight, that system more or less just washes out. We got a weak trough off the coast. Warm front here, that frontal boundary, kind of you see the southeast flow there, stronger down towards Vancouver Island area kind of weakens as you get up through here, so there won't be a push to the northwest of that front, but that'll keep the periods of rain going over the southern panhandle. Lighter amounts of rain or snow up to the north. Just some rain and snow showers continuing with this weak low still south of Resurrection Bay there. So some light rain and snow showers will continue along the eastern North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, chance of snow showers, and light snow flurries or snow showers for northern Cook Inlet up into the Susitna-Matanuska Valley, and diminishing snow there in the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country all the way up to possibly Old Crow, but these would be pretty light amounts now. Maybe some flurries again dropping down from the north of that cloud band there onto the central and west central Arctic coast. Stays windy, especially through the passes of the Brooks Range there. Northeast winds gusting 40 miles an hour. And then this week trough, remnants of that front that really falls to pieces. Just some snow showers with that over the southwest interior into Iliamna Lake. Chance of snow showers for Kodiak, and some light snow or snow showers here for the eastern Aleutians up to the Pribilofs. And then this front pushes eastward, bringing some snow or rain and snow, a little bit of an increase in the winds with it into the central Aleutians, the main low center hanging back there to the west. And for tomorrow, that breakaway low, another low develops along that front and pushes eastward. Nothing too terribly strong here, and the other one back out there to the west with pretty slack gradients, so nothing significant wind-wise here over the Bering Sea, central or southern Bering Sea. A little breezier, but still not all that strong for the winds up here for St. Lawrence Island. Light winds for the Pribilofs, maybe southeast or east-southeast ahead of this front, maybe up to gusts 30 miles an hour, 25 more likely. Some snow showers for the Alaska Peninsula, snow showers over the western interior, and a trough will bring some areas of light snow there. St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta, Norton Sound into the central interior, and then kind of wrapping back around, linking up with that leftover moisture. Still kind of a cloudy day with a chance of snow at times, northern Cook Inlet, actually all of Cook Inlet, mixed precipitation for the coastal areas, North Gulf Coast, but it'll be light. Should be dry over the northern panhandle tomorrow afternoon, and pick up some rain and snow showers over the central southeast coast, and then more solid rain there down to the south near that warm front again, Prince of Wales Island over toward Ketchikan, Shelter Cove. Mixed precipitation for Stewart. Dry and chilly up over the northern half of the state with some clear skies for the north slope, maybe the Arctic coast as well. And then the outlook first day of the weekend, not too bad in the interior, variably cloudy, maybe a few breaks here in the west, all the way up to the northern interior. Better chance of some clear skies for the north slope on out to the Arctic coast. And then weak low still south of Prince William Sound. That's going to keep a chance of snow showers, northern Cook Inlet, Matanuska Valley, to a lesser extent in the Susitna Valley. Chance of light snow showers in the Copper River Basin, but accumulations will be insignificant. Rain and snow showers for the North Gulf Coast. And this low here now coming up on the Queen Charlotte's. Warm front ahead of that keeps it wet over the southern panhandle, unsettled, drier to the north. And another trough brings more snow showers into the Alaska Peninsula. And yet another low out there over the west central Aleutians keeps it cold and with snow showers out in that area, but again, light accumulations. A little bit better chance of some light snow for St. Lawrence Island. Northeast winds may be gusting 25 to 32 miles an hour, and that's about it. Looking at the lows for tonight, 20s, mid-20s, northern panhandle to upper 30s to the south. Near 10 in the Copper River Basin, teens, Susitna Valley, mid to upper 20s for the Kenai Peninsula from about Eagle River southward to Homer, near 31. 29 for Kodiak, upper 20s, upper teens for the Bristol Bay area, and 5 below to 10 above for the Kuskokwim Valley. Highs tomorrow, anywhere from 10 to 20 for the Kuskokwim Valley. 20s to lower 30s, Bristol Bay, mid-30s, Kodiak Island, upper 20s for south central Alaska, mid-teens for the Copper River Basin, 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle. And the lows Saturday morning, upper 20s, northern southeast coast, upper 30s to the south, and 20s for the North Gulf Coast, teens and 20s south central Alaska, and anywhere from 0 to 10 above for the Kuskokwim Valley, in the upper teens for the Bristol Bay area, and then the highs Saturday afternoon, teens for the Copper River Basin, otherwise upper 30s for Kodiak Island, 30s and lower 40s for the Panhandle. Lows tonight, quite cold again, 35 to 45 below for the North Slope, otherwise just about below zero everywhere north and west, or north of the Alaska Range here into the Bering Strait as well. Highs tomorrow, 0 to 10, central interior, 7 for Fairbanks, well below zero for the Arctic coast and North Slope. And then the lows, again, down 25 to 45 below for the North Slope areas, milder for the Arctic coast, and 5 to 15 below for the central interior. Highs still single number central interior, well below zero for the Arctic coast, and out to the southwest, teens followed by highs in the 30s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Several areas of IFR went out here over the western Bering Sea, down into the central Aleutians and toward Adak late tonight, or by actually Friday morning. Another thicker band here across the northern Bering Sea, right into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, down into Bristol Bay, across the Kuskokwim Valley, into the western Alaska Range, and IFR, northern Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, Madanuska Valley, and on up into the east central interior over to the border. Good VFR back to the west and to the north, except for that IFR zone, central western Arctic coast, and IFR covering all of the Panhandle. For the afternoon, that improves dramatically here, especially in the north, going from IFR to VFR over the northern half of the Panhandle. Still marginal all along the coast, marginal VFR southern half of the Panhandle, and still some IFR down toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla, Hyder, and Stewart. And then from the western Alaska Range across the Kuskokwim Valley and Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, that band of IFR holding just up to the south side of, or southeast corner there of St. Lawrence Island, down to St. Matthew Island. Pribilof's marginal, still with that IFR on the western Arctic coast there, and a narrow band of IFR pushing into Unimak Island, but becoming mostly VFR out to the west for the central western Aleutians. And then for the afternoon, or for the morning Saturday, we've got pretty good conditions now across the central and eastern Aleutians. Some marginal VFR for the Fox Islands, VFR for the western Alaska Peninsula, narrow band of IFR right through there. Becomes pretty widespread here over the northern Bering Sea, again into mostly the Yukon Delta, Norton Sound, south side of the Seward Peninsula. Good VFR, northern half of the state, especially Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, areas of IFR across southern Alaska, and areas of IFR for the Panhandle as well. And for the afternoon, again, improving, mostly VFR now, down even into the southern Panhandle, but lower conditions. Again, that area, Ketchikan over to Hyder and Stewart, with marginal VFR along the coast, covering the Gulf of Alaska, areas of IFR for the North Gulf Coast here, western Prince William Sound, eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, but central interior on up to the Arctic coast. Good VFR. Marginal for the northwest part of the state. IFR, Bering Strait, say Nome, down to St. Matthew Island. Pribilof's marginal. VFR, Alaska Peninsula, and most of the Aleutians. And for passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, VFR, either approach for the day on Friday. Western Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill, looking a little marginal, as does rainy. Windy, same thing, especially on the southern entrance, marginal VFR. Look for bare conditions, north side into the valley. And for Isabel, IFR for that pass. And Mentasta go to marginal VFR, back to IFR for Tanita. Portage, IFR, but Chilkoot and White, VFR. And for the freezing levels, not much here to look at the surface. North of the Pribilof, south of St. Matthew Island, cutting into Shelikof Strait, North Gulf Coast, across the northern Panhandle, 2,000 feet down toward the southern areas there, Dixon Entrance, and 2,000 feet way to the south here, almost off the chart there out in the west. And icing, several bands here, best potential for some possibly significant icing, but mostly isolated moderate at best, or at heaviest here. One band coming into south central Alaska, another band here along the southwest coast, another batch here coming into the eastern Aleutians, and also for the southern southeast coast here, some elevated icing threats in that area. And the jet stream here, southerlies at about 60 knots, not too strong there for the Panhandle, pretty light with the main jet well to the south of the forecast area. You can see just barely on the chart here up to 115 knots, but that's south of the Aleutians. 9,000 feet southwest, 20 to 25 knots into the southwest coast, narrow band of 20-knot winds. Eastern interior, east 30 for the western Arctic coast, 50 knotters there for the east central Aleutians. 3,000 feet, west 45 for the eastern Aleutians. Otherwise, not too bad here over the interior. East 40 knots on the western Arctic coast. And looking at, well, let's see, a little bit stronger winds, 50 knots coming in toward Dixon Entrance there, that low pressure area. Actually, not Dixon Entrance, east of the Queen Charlottes. That should stay south of the Juneau area. Now, turbulence should be enough wind, though, for moderate turbulence, southern Panhandle, and out over the Aleutian Islands and over the western Arctic coast.
Greetings, astronomy advocates. The winter hexagon is shining again. Or is it a football? Or Zelda's rupees? Whatever you want to call it, this asterism is glittering high in the sky this time of year. To find it, look southeast after 8 p.m. The rupee encompasses 6 constellations and 8 of the brightest stars visible from Earth. The first one is the brightest star in the sky, Sirius the Dog Star. Find it using Orion's 3 belt stars. They point right at it. From here, go clockwise, and you'll find the little dog star, Procyon, and then up to Castor and Pollux, the twin stars of Gemini, and then to the other diamond point, Capella, and then back down and around through Aldebaran, the eye of Taurus the Bull, to blue supergiant and Orion's left foot, Rigel, and then back to Sirius. There you have it, the giant rupee, as Link might say, doodly doodly doo. Keep looking up.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and we have a special guest in the studio today. We welcome Amanda Terborg of the Aviation Weather Center. Thanks for joining us, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Amanda's flown in all the way from Kansas City, and for those of you that don't know, the Aviation Weather Center serves the lower 48 for aviators, just as the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit here in Anchorage serves all of Alaska. So I kind of wonder, what's the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City doing to help out Alaska, Amanda?
Yeah, you know, we do a lot of collaboration work with our sister station up here. Lately, we've been doing a lot of work, especially in the satellite meteorology.
Okay.
In particular, we have been looking at ways to better identify icing conditions in clouds, which is a big deal up here because, as I'm coming to find out, even though I'm not from here, you guys have a lot of pilots here.
We have a lot of pilots. In fact, it's, when you say you can't get there from here, that's how you get there.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so with icing potential then, what's Kansas City working on?
Well, we are working on something that will help us, again, identify the icing in the clouds. You don't want ice on your aircraft.
No.
Not only does it add a whole bunch of extra weight to your airframe when it attaches to the wings and the nose cone, but it can also mess with your aerodynamics.
Right.
And in the most serious conditions, that can mess with it enough that you can actually crash.
It changes the shape of the wing, and that makes it sometimes impossible to fly, right?
It does, yeah. So we want to figure out a way to better forecast for that.
Makes sense.
Now this particular image is over Alaska. The colors here are a little goofy. It doesn't look like your run-of-the-mill satellite image.
Okay.
But the red is where you have liquid clouds and the blue is ice. But again, it really doesn't tell you a lot where you have icing conditions in that cloud. Because in those clouds there's little droplets, and they're cold, and they're actually below freezing, but they're still liquid, and that makes them sticky.
Okay.
So when an aircraft flies through there, those droplets are sticking to the aircraft, and it can happen amazingly fast.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to find. And there is a product called the Aircraft Flight Icing Threat that does this. And it's basically looking at the temperature of the cloud, and it's also looking at the size of the droplets to identify a probability and intensity of those icing conditions.
Okay.
And if you flip to the next image, this is a case from Juneau, Alaska, where this probably wouldn't have been the best day to fly around Juneau.
Okay.
Now there was an area of moisture that pushed south from the southwest up along the coast that pushed in a stratus layer, and in the stratus layer there was a lot of those super cooled liquid drops, or a lot of stickiness.
Okay.
And so the flight icing threat was able to, in the pinks and the reds there, was able to identify where that icing was. Now this is really cool. It's really cool to be able to identify that there is, of course, caveats to every product. Much as we wish it would happen, sun doesn't shine all the time, unless I guess if you live in northern Alaska during the summertime.
Right.
But we need that sun to be able to bounce off those clouds and to be able to see where those super cool drops are.
Okay, so it's a daytime only tool.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, of course, we're in the era of advanced satellite technology, and there is a satellite that can actually use moonlight to see clouds.
Yes.
And so sometime in the future, we hope to be able to do that.
Okay.
Another thing that is a bit of a challenge is multiple layers of clouds. You can only see so far through a thick cloud.
Okay.
And if it's thick enough, sometimes you can't see a layer of icing that's below there.
Right.
But even besides those caveats, this product has a lot of potential to help out Alaskan aviators here.
Well, it sounds like a really big deal, and something that forecasters at the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit could use probably on a daily basis, and especially in the middle of a really big storm.
Yeah, I would think so.
Do you have a really good success story in the lower 48 using this tool?
It's a fairly new product, and so we're still evaluating it. But yeah, we've had a lot of cases where we have seen that it does tend to capture those icing conditions.
Okay, very good. Well, Amanda, thanks so much for sharing some of the very interesting satellite imagery and the tools that you're using there at the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City with us here in Alaska. People can probably find some of this information online, right?
Yeah, here is a website here. It's a page from NASA Langley, and they have this imagery as well as a bunch of other satellite imagery that you can take a look at.
Okay, great. And I'm sure our friends at the Alaska Aviation Weather Center and the unit will be using that in the coming months there with your training and your help there to learn more about that tool to help Alaska aviators any day of the year. That's wonderful stuff. So thanks again for joining us, Amanda, and we welcome you to view any of our Alaska weather facts on YouTube anytime at the address below, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And moving into marine forecasts here for the south coast. East winds 10 to 15 knots Friday. North coast, southeast 15 knots. And Lynn Canal, northerly breeze at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. Light northeast wind at 10 for Stevens Passage. And wind direction southeast at about 15 knots for Clarence Strait with 5-foot seas. And for Saturday, small craft advisories here down on the south coast. Northeast winds up to 25 knots, seas 10 feet. Otherwise, northwest becomes south to 10 knots for the central and north coast with 7 to 8-foot seas. Lynn Canal north at 10, northwest at 10 for Stevens Passage, and southeast wind 15 knots for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, light southeast breeze tomorrow at about 10 knots, seas down to 2 feet. North Gulf Coast, light variable winds at 10 knots with seas 4 to 5 feet. And the Barren Islands, westerlies at 15 knots, Kamishak Bay, northwest at 15, and Cook Inlet, light variable winds at 10 knots with 1 to 2 foot seas. And then for Saturday, Cook Inlet, north to northeast winds picking up 15 to 20 knots, seas building 3 to 5 feet. East to 20 for Kamishak Bay with 5-foot seas. Small craft advisories for the Barren Islands, southeast at 25, south to southeast winds at 20 for the North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound, east winds 15 knots. Kodiak Island, west-northwest winds at 15 knots, and south at 15 for Bristol Bay. The Alaska Peninsula, southwest winds at 20 knots. And then for the first day of the weekend, Alaska Peninsula, southwest winds 20 to 25 knots, seas 7 to 12 feet. Bristol Bay, east winds at 25 knots. And Kodiak Island, south winds at 20 knots, except east at 15 for Shelikof Strait. Eastern Aleutians for Friday. South to southwest winds 20 to 30 knots, and for the central Aleutians, south to southwest winds 30 to 35 knots, and some gale warnings for east at 35 from Chitka Island, and then Kiska to Shimia, winds southwest at 20 knots. And for Saturday, Western Aleutians, north to west winds, 25 knots. Adak and Atka, west-southwest, 20 to 25 knots. And for the Fox Islands, southwest winds, 15 to 25 knots, with seas running 10 to 15 feet. For the Kuskokwim Delta coast, winds will be south at 15 knots for Friday, east at 15 for the Yukon Delta coast. Brisk wind advisories up around St. Lawrence Island, northeast at 30 knots there. Same thing for St. Matthew Island, southwest at 20 for the Pribilofs. And then St. Paul, St. George Island on Saturday, southwest at 15. Small craft advisories here for the Kuskokwim Delta coast. East winds 25 knots, 15 knot easterlies for the Yukon Delta coast. Northeast 25, St. Lawrence Island. Northeast 25 for St. Matthew Island, with seas here over the northern Bering Sea up to 10 feet. And for the Chukchi Sea tomorrow, northeast winds 25 knots. Gale warnings from Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson there, northeast at 35 knots. Otherwise, brisk wind advisories, western Arctic coast, northeast at 30 knots. Northeast 25 for the central coast, and east to northeast winds down to 20 knots for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for Friday or for Saturday, east-northeast winds at 15 knots for the eastern Arctic coast, northeast at 20 for the central coast, and still brisk wind advisories here for the western Arctic coast all the way down to Cape Thompson. East-northeast winds at 30 knots in the Chukchi Sea, looking at a northeast wind at about 20 knots. And for tonight, again, dry and pretty cold up here over the North Slope Brooks Range, all out to the Arctic coast. Wind chill advisories. Maybe a few flurries of some moisture dropping down from the north to the central Arctic coast. Areas of light snow or snow showers here across southern Alaska, diminishing here over the eastern interior. Snow showers with this system. Pribilofs to the eastern Aleutians. Rain and snow coming in with that front to the western Aleutians. And still the wettest conditions will be over the southern panhandle. Tomorrow, that continues as well. Pretty dry up to the north there. Chance of showers, south central Alaska, interior here, chance of snow, and no change up to the north. Bering Sea, unsettled and cloudy here through Friday, and actually into Saturday as well, as we'll see low pressure here over the west central Aleutians. Widespread area of rain and snow showers there. Another low keeps it kind of snowy and breezy into Bristol Bay. The interior looking pretty dry. Still a chance of snow showers over the Susitna Valley, into the Copper River Basin, maybe into...
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.